Go ahead, Dave.
Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Good afternoon and welcome to Grand Rapids Community College Board of Trustees meeting Monday, October 19, 2020. I'm wondering if you, Dr. Pink, or any trustee have anyone in the audience that they would like to introduce at this time.
I do not, Chairperson Cucci. Thank you.
Hearing none, our first order of business then will be to approve our agenda for today. Trustees, note this is the time to move any item off our consent agenda. If you would like further consideration of any item that's on our consent agenda. Any changes to today's agenda as presented in our packet? Hearing none, a motion please to approve today's agenda as presented.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there support for that? There's support. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same sign. That carries. We'll move now to public comment. This is the time in our agenda where if any of you in our virtual audience wish to address the board on any matter that relates to today's agenda, now is the time to do that. Do that please by taking advantage of the chat function on your screen. We will give you 5 minutes because it's a little clumsy to type those on that screen. We'll give you 5 minutes to do that. We're, however, going to proceed with our agenda. And if there are comments that come in, we will interrupt where we are in our agenda in 5 minutes and we will listen to your comments. Please note that we'll listen to your comments, but likely not address those comments at this time. So while you are doing that, we are going to proceed with our agenda. And that takes us to special order of business. We have an audit that we need to review this afternoon. I'm going to invite Lisa Freiberger to the screen so that she can introduce the representatives from Plant Moran who have done our audit. So Lisa.
Yes, thank you and good afternoon. Would like to introduce Vicki Vandenberg, who is our partner with Plant Moran, who is going to share with you a brief PowerPoint rather than reviewing our entire audited financial statements, which you all should have received as part of your packet. Rather than trying to review those in detail on screen, we felt like a PowerPoint might be more appropriate. That said, both she and I can answer any questions that you might have about the audit, the financial statements, or process. Would certainly like to thank Vicki and her team from Plant Moran. They've done a terrific job moving through this audit with very unusual processes entirely virtually, which was a first for all of us. And then likewise, Todd, Hurley, and Nat, and the entire finance team here at GRCC have done a tremendous job working through that entire process. An audit is challenging in and of itself. Doing it all virtually is more so. So certainly appreciate all of their help as well. As Vicki will share, we once again have a clean audit and are very pleased with that. So with that, I will turn it over to Vicki. And class, I believe we have a PowerPoint to bring up.
Thank you, Lisa. This is Vicki Vandenberg, and I'm pleased to present the results of the audit this year. And like Lisa said, yes, a very unusual year. If you want to flip to the next slide. There we go. What I'm going to cover today are all the things I normally have covered, or I refer you to certain pages of the report and things like that, but instead we're just going to really try and cover it with these slides. As Lisa stated, the audited financial statements are those of the colleges. Our piece is the audit opinion, which is a clean, unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of assurance we can do. At the bottom of page 1 of the opinion, though, is an emphasis of matter referring to the users to look at the impact of COVID-19 on the operations of the college. And that specifically refers to note 1, which is on page 24, for you to look through and look at kind of the comments that are there. That refers to the impact on operations as well as the various CARES Act grants that were awarded to the college and where they stand on spending those through the end of the fiscal year. The next couple of things I'm going to cover are some key financial highlights, nothing significant, but just point out a couple of key points related to the overall college as well as just the general fund. And then the last piece is just referring to what we call the GAGUS letter, And that is an additional letter included in your packet this year because we cannot currently issue the audit on your federal expenditures. And I'll talk about that in just a couple of minutes. And then required communications letter, which is also included in your packet. Next slide, please. So on here, it's just at a high level, we look at the college and all of your assets compared from prior year to current year. So, and this excludes the deferred outflows, which is really that deferred component of the MIPSers, both pension and OPEB, that really is not a true asset of the colleges. It's just the timing differences on the plan. And again, here that makes up 20% of your asset base, but excluding them, it's 244 million compared to 229 million. And a lot of the increases in the capital assets standpoint or area. And so you can see the cash equivalent, your accounts receivable, other current is very little, and then long-term investments. So you've weathered the storm well so far, actually increasing the cash and cash equivalent, and again, the rest of it's on the capital side. Next slide,
Hey,
please.
Vicki,
Yes.
I'm sorry, this is Bill. I don't know how it may, and just might be my sound, but for some reason, it's hard to understand what you're saying. I don't know if it's the microphone or whatever, and it could just be my computer. But
It is not.
I don't know how everyone else is getting it. It just doesn't, it's kind of very muffled. It can't really hear very well.
That's true for me as well, Bill.
Right.
So if I can adjust that, I'm trying to then get the volume up. Is that any better?
It just sounds muffled. And when you talk, it's hard to really tell what you're saying.
One option here is if you wanted to disconnect and reconnect, it might improve.
I could also flip just to my
That's
computer
perfect.
audio.
That's perfect
That's
right
much
there.
better. Whatever you just did, it's perfect. You're crystal clear.
Okay. All right. Do you want me to go back to the previous slide?
That's
Please-
at the
please
pleasure
do.
board.
Yeah, please do.
Okay. All right, so I apologize for that. On this slide, again, just as Lisa already stated, the audited financial statements, the financial statements of the college are prepared by the finance department, her, Todd, and Nat, and the rest of the team, and they do a fabulous job. The opinion is ours, and that is, we did give the college a clean, unmodified opinion. It is the highest level of assurance. But we do have one new item in there this year at the bottom of page 1 of the opinion letter. It refers to an emphasis of matter related to the impact of COVID-19 on the operations of the college. And that is actually on page 24 of the financial statements in note 1, where it talks about that overall impact on the operations, as well as the federal grants that you've been awarded and your impact on spending those year to date. And then I'm going to just address a couple key financial highlights on the following pages, both overall and general fund. And then also the inclusion of the report on internal control over financial reporting, which is not usually in this packet, but I just want to talk about why that's there. And that is because we cannot currently issue the college's schedule of expenditures of federal awards. And that is because the impact there is really due to the fact that the CARES Act funding came so rapidly that the regulations on how we're supposed to audit how that is spent have not yet been released and are not going to be released till November. So we will be issuing that single audit at a later date. But this letter, the GAGAS letter, which is at the very end of your financial statement packet, is also a clean letter. And this relates to compliance requirements, on internal control over financial reporting. And again, that was also a clean opinion letter that is normally only included in your single audit report. So it's a little bit confusing, but we have to issue that letter at the same time. So we've included that here. And then I'll briefly touch on the required communications when we're done.
So Vicki, as far as so you're saying that there's an additional report related to the ACA that you will give to us in November. Are you planning to come back to the board, or we'll just forward the letter to Lisa and she'll share it with us?
Yeah, the additional report, it's actually additional report. We'll be issuing that
we won't even get the audit guidance till mid to late November. So we probably, I would guess we'd issue the single audits December, early January. And it's up to Lisa whether we bring that back to present to the board or just include in your board packets. And again, that's because of the CARES Act monies that you've spent are part of that single audit or federal compliance audit.
Okay, the CARES Act. Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Next slide, please. So on here is just a high-level summary of the college's assets. And again, it's your deferred outflows is a timing difference related to MIPSers. So while it's 20% of your assets, we kind of pull them out because they're really not part of your core asset base. But then I look at where you are. So your cash and cash equivalents are at 11%. That's actually up about 8 million from last year. Your long-term investments are down just a couple of million. So really you've done a good job just staying liquid, which is what you needed to be doing at the end of June. And then the biggest difference or increase in your assets is your capital assets are up to 160 million compared to 147 a year ago. And that has to do with your capital outlay. Next slide, please. On the other hand, the overall college liabilities, you can see here, as we've talked about for a number of years, of your liabilities, 277.3 million, 70% of that relate to the pension and OPEB, which your allocated share of the MIPSers plans. And so what you have control over is the other 30%. And on there, really not even that, because 12% is deferred inflow. So really about 18% of your liabilities are really what are under your control: accrued compensation, unearned revenue, and some of your long-term obligations, which is your debt. But all real solid numbers on the items you have control over and consistent. Next slide. I'm just going to, at a real high level, point out the revenues expenses of the college. So the yellow line is your operating revenues. So you can see 53.7 million down from 56.7 million last year. A lot of that has to do with one, it was summer was down significantly. Spring, of course, you had students that elected to defer as opposed to taking online and different things like that. Your expenses, 139.8 million compared to 134.4. Part of that increase there relates to the emergency student grants you had to give under the CARES Act are included in there, as well as just some of the other budgeted, regular, planned expenses from that standpoint. And almost all of that increases on the instruction side as well. The blue is the non-operating revenues. So in here, a couple of different things, and we've got a slide that summarizes it all in a few minutes, but that 94.8 million, while it's up from 88.9, your state appropriations are down almost $1 million. Your property taxes are up. That's the big increase. And then your Pell revenue is also down. That's subject to what students and their Title IV eligibility. So that comes through as a pass-through. And then what the big piece down here, a couple things. One is a $3.5 million contribution from the foundation for capital. And then 2.4 million is the amount that you'd spent of the higher ed emergency relief funds, or your expenses on the CARES Act as of June 30. And then the orange is the capital contributions, a real small amount this year, 3.5. Well, that's the piece from the foundation. And then so your change in that position or bottom line for the year, 8.6 million compared to 11.2. So solid results, but it was the help of the capital contribution as well as the CARES Act. Next slide. I want to briefly go to the general fund because that's really what drives your revenues and expenses for the year, and that's how your college really operates. The plant fund and all those other pieces are your infrastructure, but here again, when you summarize the impacts, tuition and fees are down, state appropriations are down. They took that piece away and turned it into CARES Act or coronavirus relief funds in fiscal 21. And so that's when you'll spend most of that. And then your property taxes, a slight increase there. So, and then when you look at your expenses and transfers, your net increase in general fund balance for the year, about 1.3 compared to 1.9. But again, fund balance is still very fiscally solid and secure. That represents 17.2% of your expenses, which I think is something that you're pleased with. You were able to slightly increase that. So that is good news. But I did want to point out, we're obviously not out of the woods yet. 2020 was just a small impact of what happened with COVID-19. I think we'll see a huge impact on COVID-19 in fiscal 21. Primarily, really the biggest impact I think will be on your auxiliaries, your parking, your any of your ancillary services to your core instruction. And then fiscal 22 is still yet to be determined. So the letter that was also, if you could go to the next slide, please. The letter that was also included in your packet just talked about that the scope of our audit was planned. Everybody gave us great cooperation, and I can't thank everybody enough for that. This was all done remotely. So we were having video calls with people to observe processes and transactions and doing all kinds of things different than we've ever done them in the past. The one nice thing about all of this is we did not have to adopt any new reporting standards this year, which was, those were all deferred as a result of the pandemic. And so we'll have to deal with those in future years, but at least for this year, we were able to just focus on operations and status quo. And again, I already mentioned that the audit of federal programs is in process. And so we primarily audit student financial aid, but then we'll also be auditing that CARES Act expenditures that you've had so far from a federal compliance standpoint. I think that's all, unless there are any questions.
So are there questions for Vicki from any trustee at this time? Hearing none. Lisa, do you have any other comments you wish to make at this time?
I do not.
Good. Okay. Vicki, any other comments from you?
I do not, other than thank you so much for working with us again this year. And again, if you any other questions that you have, please feel free to let us know.
Thank you. Once again, it's a reminder of just how detailed and well-planned our business office is, and just accolades to you, Lisa, and your team for what I would call this marvelous pat on the back once again. It's our responsibility not to approve this audit, but to accept it. And I will accept a motion right now that we accept the audit as presented.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there support for that?
Support.
Support. Any more conversation or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 All opposed, that same sign. That motion does carry. Thank you so much, Vicki. We'll allow you now to go about and do whatever you need to do, and we'll see you again. We will move on to monitoring reports. Teaching and learning monitoring report is on our agenda, and I see Sheila's name, and I see Dylan's name up there somewhere, and I think I'm turning it over to you guys. Well, at least you, Sheila, I see you. And so I'm going to turn it over to you, and we'll go from there.
Thank you. We do have a presentation that class is going to share right now. Good evening, Chairman Cucci, members of the board, Dr. Pink, and Ms. McClure Anderson. I'm Dr. Sheila Jones, and I serve as GRCC's Dean of Instructional Support. I'm joined by my fellow Goal 1 co-champion, Dr. Dylan Carr, Assistant Professor of Anthropology. We're excited to be with you to kick off this year's series of monitoring reports in the third year of our strategic plan, and to share how all of our college action projects are progressing. Next slide, please. We have 3 college action projects associated with the teaching and learning goal. These projects represent very broad areas with regards to optimizing what and how we offer both programs and courses to students, measuring student learning, and improving online learning. CAP 1.1 is in its third year and has been led by Dr. Werner Absinger, Program Director, Decke Institute for Culinary Education, and Dr. Eric Mullen, Dean of Student Success and Retention. CAP 1.2 was part of our previous strategic plan and is in its fourth year. Christina McElwee, Associate Professor of English, and I co-champion this project. CAP 1.3 is also in its fourth year and is led by Dr. Megan Lockard, Assistant Professor of English, and Bill Knapp, our Executive Director of Distance Learning and Instructional Technologies. These three CAPs represent over 50 faculty and staff members volunteering their time and energy to further Goal 1. In the next few slides, we'll highlight each project and also provide an update as to our Goal 1 indicators of success and ways you can help support teaching and learning at GRCC. For CAP 1.1, you can see with the goals and activity on the slide, this team is undertaking comprehensive reviews of our student needs for course delivery, as well as how we can enhance our current academic offerings to serve our local region. The team has been sharing insights from this research with our academic departments within our two schools, the School of Arts and Sciences and the School of Workforce Development. Especially in our current context, this research has supported course and program delivery as we transition to providing teaching and learning in more distance formats since March. CAP 1.2 focuses on assessing learning outcomes in our general education courses. For our audience members who are not as familiar with general education, these courses are the foundational courses all students take in our associate degree programs. They include requirements in English composition and communication, humanities, social sciences, and natural sciences and mathematics. This CAP is unique from some of our other CAPs at GRCC, as it is also a project for the Higher Learning Commission Assessment Academy and Quality Initiative projects. The Higher Learning Commission, or HLC, is the accrediting body for our institution.
Hang on one second, the video paused on us.
Okay. We're glad you said that, class, because each of us as individuals thought we were the only ones having a problem. It's nice to know that the entire group was experiencing the same thing.
While that gets worked on, just being new, can I ask a question of how faculty get involved in you mentioned how many are a part of volunteering their time to participate in each of these CAP. How does that happen? How do they get involved?
Sure, I can answer that if you like. The faculty are all volunteers. Each of the CAP co-champions was asked through, I think, a process a couple years ago, and Dr. Pink asked us to lead these projects, and then we reached out to folks to volunteer.
And Trustee Williams, one of the things about our strategic leadership team, these CAPs, when we have our five strategic goals, and these goals all have these college action projects embedded. And what you're seeing here with that strategic goal number 1, teaching and learning, the CAP projects underneath that Dr. Jones and Dr. Carr oversee, they're very focused on work that has been identified through the college under that CAP as to be something we need to either examine, pay closer attention to, or truly make some hard moves in. But the first step is really examination for those topics to see, is this indeed an issue on campus? And if so, what do we need to do about it? And so what happens is that with those CAP projects, our faculty and staff, depending on what the CAP project is throughout the 5 goals, And many of those CAP projects have both faculty and staff on there. They do incredible work above and beyond just the classroom or their job here on campus. And they really examine and get deep into this. There's funding on the side that the institution puts forward for our strategic leadership team, so that if there's funding you needed to do some of this work, that there's some funding available. And what happens out of here are some really good collections of information on what we're doing and what we need to be doing. And there have been several initiatives that have been birthed out of our CAP process on campus. And so it's one of those things that's been in place at the college for a good while. And in seeing it, upon coming to GRCC myself and seeing it, was very impressed with how you can assemble 80 to 90 people. Many of you, several of our board members, Trustee Siegel being the one I see on this call right now, being involved in that strategic leadership team meeting once a month. It's amazing how we gather 90 people together on a consistent basis to truly do some really good work. And so with what you see on these strategic goals that's in those CAP projects, those are faculty and staff who say, yep, let me help with that. And typically it may have a lot to do with their work in general.
So Sheila, what we're demonstrating here is what our classroom teachers have to deal with since March. And that is, we've got these things well planned. We've got a presentation, and now there's a glitch in the technology. And so now we have to, I'm going to overuse the word pivot, but we got to pivot now onto something else.
We're good to go, Dave.
We're good to go. All right, class, go ahead.
Or HLC, is the accrediting body for our institution. The HLC-related aspects of this project will continue into 2022. Our goals and activities include taking what we've learned throughout the past few years to continue to make improvements in curriculum delivery and assessment, as well as expanding the general education courses included in our work. We've been very successful thus far due to the support of our faculty and associate deans in creating a data collection tool to help streamline our reporting and help us tell our story as to how we use our data to improve student learning. Just last week, our college's Academic Governing Council approved revised general education learning outcomes that are a product of this work. CAP 1.3 seeks to expand and improve outcomes in online learning, which includes our 4 distance learning formats: online, virtual, hybrid, and face-to-face. One of this team's goals is to expand Quality Matters training to faculty. If you're not familiar with Quality Matters, it is a national organization and the gold standard for online education. As a result of this CAP, GRCC has formalized our alignment to Quality Matters standards via academic policies. The CAP's current activities are listed here, and we want to emphasize that GRCC faculty have been teaching online for years, and that we've always offered and required extensive training and professional development to support quality online teaching and learning. The slide illustrates how that has continued, with additional faculty completing our online hybrid certification course this past summer. For comparison, 8 faculty members completed this course last summer, and 115 did so recently, to further enhance their skills during COVID remote learning. This type of training and support is the hallmark of our distance learning and instructional technologies and Center for Teaching Excellence areas. We're very proud of the work that we've been continuing to do remotely for faculty and students. I'll now turn the presentation over to Dylan for an update on our indicators of success.
We're using 2 indicators to evaluate progress along this goal here. The first indicator is student surveys around satisfaction with curriculum and curriculum delivery. The second indicator we're using is course success rates for our top 10 enrolled courses in here. In terms of indicator 1, we've adjusted from in previous years where we've combined the 2 main surveys that we use as an institution to evaluate student satisfaction. We use the CESI survey and the Noel Levitt survey, but rather than trying to combine the 2 of them together and normalize it, which causes some problems, What we're doing is we provide you with the updates for the survey, which are administered on every other year. So previous time we came here, we gave you updates from the CESI survey and the elements that deal with curriculum and curriculum satisfaction. This year, we're going to give you updates on the Noel-Levitz survey, since that was the most recent one administered. So Noel-Levitz works on a 7-point scale of student satisfaction, obviously 0 being on the bottom, 7 being the top with this. And what we can see here is that GRCC's response rates is relatively consistent with both the large college benchmarks and our baseline numbers from the previous version of the survey, which have been from 2018 in here. So at this point, our results are still within the normal range with a 1.1 decline from there, which really isn't statistically meaningful on a survey like this. In here. And so the specific questions from this do capture, I think, a lot of elements of this goal. That there's a couple questions on instructional effectiveness. There's a couple questions on student satisfaction with registration effectiveness. Those are stuff that obviously CAP 1.1 is touching on. The instructional stuff is what CAPs 1.2 and 1.3 are covering with that. There are some differences within demographic categories, but those fit with national trends, and in fact, they're really not as pronounced on the Noel-Levitz survey from here. So at this point, we're not really seeing anything that gives us any significant concern in terms of understanding our students' satisfaction with the curriculum. That remains at a relatively high level across the institution. The second indicator that we're using for evaluating this are course success rates for selected gateway courses. And so this indicator here identifies those courses that have the top 10 enrolled 4-credit courses, and it shows students that are achieving successful completion of the course based upon C- or higher. The only sort of qualification with this data here is that this list actually changes from year to year depending upon enrollment with this. And although a lot of these courses are stable from year to year, GRCC has gone through a number of changes to our graduation requirements recently that have led to adjustments to the particular list of courses that make it onto this list here. When we look at the normal ranges, what we see is that our target would be 72% success rates, but we can say a normal range is we're using a 1% difference on either end of that to account for normal statistical variation. And so our fall 2019 course success rates is at 69%, which is at the bottom end of the normal range. So 1% below what the 3-year baseline for these courses happen to be. There's obviously a difference between the overall courses, the 78% for all fall 2019 courses. But one of the things we see with these top 10 courses, a lot of these are sort of core gateway courses into a large number of programs. And so to use the more informal term that students might use for these, there's a lot of weeder courses for them. And so what it does is point out for us that our curriculum as a whole has still a high level of rigor for it. And what we're seeing is, although we're still not increasing in terms of overall success rates, the 1% down has not given us any sort of immediate sort of concern. Although if this trend holds as we're evaluating going forward, that's obviously something that we want to pay attention to in here. So to use a sort of an archaeological term, 2 points don't make a straight line, but 3 do. And so this definitely is something that we'll keep an eye on for this. The other thing to note for these data is that these are fall 2019 data, so they don't have an impact from COVID on these data for them. And then finally, in terms of considerations for this goal, overall, our indicators are showing relative stability across time in terms of the effect of teaching and learning. That doesn't mean that we're not continuing to look for ways in which we can improve of these outcomes as an institution, as the 3 CAP projects underneath this goal we're really attesting to. Obviously, CAP 1.1 is trying to find not just the increased student satisfaction of the courses they want to have and at the times they want, But also we're looking for sort of questions on modality changes, introducing more weekend courses, night courses, 7-week courses, and really trying to find the best fit to put our students in the best pace to succeed. So it should create movement on both of those categories, particularly to the course outcomes as more and more of our curriculum is moving onto an online format. CAP 1.3's work is showing that we're really building a lot of training and a lot of processes to really start increasing across the institution the overall quality and effectiveness of those courses. And the same thing with the Gen Ed CAP project as well, that as we're increasing our assessments outcome, that assessment data provides us with insight in terms of what adjustments we might make curricularly to achieve both of those outcomes in there. So we do have a lot of stuff going on at the institution that we feel does tie directly into these indicators, and hopefully we'll see a lot of movement or success with that going forward. And finally, the other point is with this current year with COVID-19 is that hopefully with already having a lot of the assessment projects in place and already having a CAP focused on increasing online teaching and learning, that will help us maintain a lot of momentum and progress even through a disruption that COVID-19 is. To finish up, in terms of what we can ask the boards for assistance on, is that as you continue to interact with the public, that you become more of our principal vocal advocates within the community, and really can promote the high quality of teaching and learning amongst everybody you're interacting with in the public, and pointing out that this is something that even though we're in a disruptive period, this is not something that GRCC as an institution wasn't prepared for in terms of building up and supporting the online and virtual modalities in here. And so I think we're as best positioned as any institution to sort of hitting the ground running and maintaining that momentum. And the more and more you can sort of promote that quality teaching and learning. Might be a little biased, but we do have the best teaching here. And so that's something you can help us out with. And tied into that is one of the things we see is there continues to be a stigma attached to community college. There's now real college. That's obviously not something that we see on the ground. And fortunately, there's been a lot of traction with the hashtags here, which has really been trying to change that messaging. This becomes even more important going forward as a large number of initiatives, both at the state level and nationally, have been advocating for universal community college access. And so not sort of dismissing as a secondary option, but really this becomes the primary and probably the most important vehicle for promoting college access and promoting increased equity nationally. And so ending that community college stigma is a helpful way. So that's another sort of message I feel like the board is in a really good position to promote.
Thank you, Doug. A few more on just that message and how all of our board members can help promote the excellent quality teaching and learning at GRCC. And this is a little bit more on our final slide here about the hashtag NCC stigma and real college messages. If you're like me, you might have engaged more with Twitter, given our current circumstances. And the hashtag NCC stigma was started by Dr. Steve Robinson. The image on the left shows how different educators and advocates use that hashtag to communicate the value of community colleges nationally. Hashtag Real College is from the Hope Center for College, Community, and Justice, which is led by Dr. Sarah Goldrick-Robb, who joined us at our 2020 Learning Day. This message is to promote and advocate for the quote unquote real college experience of our students to better, serve them and support them with financial policies and programs, among many other goals and initiatives. They also provide research, and we're currently participating in this year's hashtag Real College survey. We'd love for your help and to serve as ambassadors using these campaigns. So, thank you. And now Dylan and I are ready to answer questions.
Thank you, Dylan and Sheila. Each year that I've been privileged to listen to you guys report on these strategic initiatives, I'm always impressed at how intentional we are at trying to listen to student voice. And as I look back over the last 12 months, how many alterations we've had already just in how we deliver program as a result of that. So from a 20,000 foot view of what you guys are doing, it continues to be really impressive, and we're just incredibly grateful for that. Having said that, though, maybe your comments and your report triggered some questions that we can deal with at this time. And please note, trustees, at our upcoming work sessions, we'll also have opportunity to dig a little deeper if we choose to do that into these reports. So any questions at this point for either Dylan or Sheila? Go ahead, Kathleen.
I've seen reference, talking about CAP 1.3, I've seen reference to a distance learning faculty advisory board. Can you tell us a little bit about the makeup of that board, how often they meet, what role they have in 1.3?
Go ahead, Dylan. I see you unmuted.
I'm not directly familiar with the exact operation of the that board, but like most of our cross-campus committees, they're a combination of faculty from arts and sciences, workforce development, support staff that are directly involved. One of the things that the college is really good about is it really intentionally looking at the makeup of committees. So it's not just the same 3 people and the sort of friends they're tied in with, but there's really just an intentionality to make it as cross college as possible. And that particular board is very much there. And so what they do is they come alongside our distance learning and instructional technology department. And so they provide kind of an advisory role for the full-time staff there that work on these initiatives. So the CAP project itself is specifically set up to look at targeted goals or projects, namely like administering the Quality Matters initiative. That would have come out of that committee's work a couple years prior, as they're looking for what can we do to create some set of standards that are universal and put that into place. They would have benchmarked, identified Quality Matters. Then it goes on to the CAP project to actually implement that in process. So that's kind of how it looks and works.
Thank you.
I would even echo with what Dylan said about Quality Matters. You saw in the presentation that mention of Quality Matters. Understand, trustees, when we say that's the gold standard nationally, that's what higher ed institutions typically aspire to in terms of those competencies within Quality Matters. Every previous institution I've been a part of, when it came to online education, there was always a question of, so how are you aligned with Quality Matters competencies, and so that piece coming out of that group then passed on to DLIT, distance learning, instruction technology, and those faculty who are involved there. And as Dylan said, it's a cross section of disciplines there.
I just want to say I really appreciate that with 2 teenagers who are taking multiple levels of distance learning, the focus of this institution on quality, I really appreciate it. It's helpful.
Thanks, Kathleen. Other questions?
I have a question. First, like a comment. To me, GRCC is most definitely real college. So I'm interested about the stigma. And so the hashtag in GRC stigma. Is it the stigma? Does it reside with our students? Is it with high school teachers? Is it community? I don't think it's with business. Is it with business? So help me understand exactly. You've challenged us to help you break down that stigma. Where do you see that stigma residing in our community?
I know all 3 of us probably have comment on this one, but I will end it. But Dylan, you and Sheila, I'm sure you guys have some comment there. And by the way, Trustee Brame, it's in CC stigma, so it's a national. It's not just a GRCC; it's a national movement there. But Sheila, you or Dylan, please. Oh, Sheila, can't hear you.
You mute yourself.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to add to what Dr. Pink just said. It really is a national movement. And Trustee Brame, I appreciate what you said, that you don't see it with our businesses. I think we see it sometimes with, again, making sure when we see national articles about colleges and universities, they include community colleges. And regionally, it's working with our transfer partners and universities. And sometimes we do see our students maybe not think of GRCC is the place to start. And really, you know, we want to make sure that the message is we're absolutely that place for students in this area to get their degree.
Yeah, I would echo those. I think it's less the intentional formal relationships we have with business partners that obviously are coming here to set up formal relationships, and they're seeing a lot of value coming out of that. And I would say even if you talk to a lot of students, parents, teachers, guidance counselors, even on the surface, they wouldn't necessarily say they're sort of consciously promoting these types of stigmas, but how they generally work is you see these subconscious kind of attitudes coming out, little words like, well, I guess I'm just going to go to community college. Those small little sort of microaggressions for to tie it into a broader literature. They come out in a lot of ways. And what that does over time, kind of with those little linguistic cues, is kind of erode that idea that community college is at that same sort of tier when curricularly and process-wise and everything, it really is. So I would say less the formal relationships, but it's more just sort of general, I would say, subconscious attitudes that the community as a whole holds that come out in these small little kind of subtle ways that continue on what probably came into place 70, 80 years ago. I think that was one of the big pushes why GRCC went from being JC to GRCC. Is dropping that junior sort of qualifier on it as well. So it's a really great observation, and one of those is they're hard to really combat because I don't think a lot of people are intentionally trying to do it, but it's really sort of changing a lot of these day in, day out habits in terms of how you think about and talk about community college.
I would end that by saying my previous, when I think about being in Oklahoma and state of Oregon in my professional career, typically community colleges had that, if you will, that stigma of if you can't do anything else, go to the community college. And what I have found here in Grand Rapids, now, quite frankly, NCC stigma hashtag, many of my colleagues across the country, we were really pushing that when that first came out. My push was mainly on the on other social media channels to say, and we still do some of that. We post articles quite often on the value. But what I found here at GRCC, Trustee Brame, is when you've been around a community for over 100 years, that community typically has grown in knowing what that respect looks like and what that college is all about. I have found that community college here in Grand Rapids seems to have more, to be more readily accepted as a truly viable resource and viable direction here in Grand Rapids. We still see it every once in a while and typically it's not the business community. Typically I hear it mainly from parents who just don't understand and aren't familiar, do not know about the work of the college. And once they find out, and when they find out the quality that you heard about today combined with the price point, that stigma is gone pretty quickly.
Bill, this is Kathy. I think one of the places we just have to continue to enlist assistance is our alumni. We've got amazing alumni from GRCC. And that's what the four-year colleges often rely on to promote their schools, is those alumni groups. We don't leverage that quite enough in CC. And I'm always happy when I see like the Dave Custer recognition. That's fabulous because it lets parents know and educators know that there's a network coming out of GRCC that their students are going to be able to join and rely on. So I do think that's an advantage that we haven't fully leveraged at this point.
Yeah, and I agree with that, Trustee Crosby. And you'll hear Dave Custer talk about it, and he's right from a standpoint of what we typically get is our alum who talk mostly about their four-year education, who've been through us, right? But that alumni office at that four-year school, aside from before they finish, are already tapping their shoulder about how do you give back. And so typically we hear a lot about their four-year experience, and then we come back and say, well, wait a minute, but you're a CC grad as well, or a JC grad as well. And you're exactly right. We tend to understand better about how we just continue to push those people to say, you know what, you're one of ours too. Let us shine a light on you. What we did here recently with Dr. Ezra, Nkechi Ezra, with honoring her as our distinguished alum. She is a huge cheerleader for this college. And so we just have to keep those cheerleaders out in front so people hear about it. You're exactly right.
Dr. Pink, I know a lot of colleges, you're not necessarily a graduate to be an alum. Is that correct? Because if you spent 2 years at University of Michigan, they're still asking you for money. And I'm wondering, for example, when I was in college, I spent the summers at GRJC back in the day, and so I took classes there. I'm wondering if there's a way to connect to. I mean, you'd expand your pool that people who have benefit from education from the college, even though we didn't necessarily graduate.
Oh, I think you're exactly right, Trustee Brain, because of how this institution continues. As you said, we continue for some students who graduate and go off to U of M, MSU, and other places around the country, come back here and summertime, knock a couple classes out right here on our campus. Or we also have those who are at those institutions and still taking one back here via online with us. And so you're exactly right. This college, even though some folks don't end up getting that degree as a rater, they have leveraged this college in many ways. And so you're exactly right. It's that strategy going forward, how we do that to get that word out.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, not to. I don't want to belabor the point, but I think it's an important piece, especially as we move into, you know, as you all so articulated so well, that data that we were looking at through 2019 is giving us some terrific baseline data. We're going to be able to disaggregate this from the fall and what we're seeing in 2020 with COVID and with these switches, and being able to really think about where are some leverage points in that. And, you know, and as was said, how do we leverage alumni? We also have early college, middle college, dual enrollment kids coming through as well. And, you know, so how are we articulating this as a part of, this is the journey, like this is a part of your journey here. And it might be, as Kenyatta said, you know, taking classes in the summer, it might be a certification, it might be this idea of your educational journey here, and you're all a part of an alumni story, I think is really a powerful piece. And we're going to see with the essential worker piece, with the promise zone, there's various folks who are engaging for different reasons now. And that story about that journey is really an important one.
That's so true.
Well stated. Any other comments or questions?
President Cucci, if I could make a comment, I'll try and be brief. Having the honor of being on the strategic leadership team committee meetings, not only does a strategic teams promote camaraderie across disciplines, which is remarkable and important in of itself, but it coalescing tremendous percentage of the faculty on student success, but as much data that's thrown at our faculty. What amazed me is the drilling down on those elusive, non-quantifiable pieces of student success. For instance, inquisitiveness. That was a subcommittee's focus. And it amazed me how engaged the faculty was on how do we maintain engagement, inquisitiveness, curiosity, and passion, especially in the midst of an indirect modality of disseminating information and knowledge. Quite extraordinary. I think in terms of the strategic learning teams, they have absolutely left no stone unturned. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Cheryl, for highlighting that fact. So often what gets lost in all of these conversations are those things that seem to matter most. So we talked about program and how we leverage program to enhance brand and enhance infatuation with community college. Dylan and Sheila, you need to know that we know that program is people, and you are the people. You are the backbone and back of that. And we are so incredibly grateful for that. You are what matters most when it comes to enhancing the brand of this institution, and you do that well. We notice it and we appreciate it. So on that note, we're going to let you guys go and do what you need to do next, and we're going to move on with our agenda. Thanks again for the report, and we look forward to hearing from you guys later again in the future.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So moving on our agenda, we do have one other monitoring report. We need to take a brief financial update with Lisa. I do see her on the screen. Lisa, go ahead. I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. And class, I promise to be brief. Class, if you could go ahead and start the PowerPoint. I do, which is unusual, have a couple of slides that I want to share. We had so much uncertainty around primarily our revenue sources as the budget was adopted back in June. We committed to come back to you in the fall with a comprehensive update. So not a budget amendment by any means, but an update of a little more depth so that we can close that loop with particularly the items that were open as we work through the summer. So class, if you could go to the first slide, it will be pretty quick, but would be happy to answer any questions on either this PowerPoint or the financial statements, which were included in your packet. General fund is, as Vicki noted earlier, where we tend to focus. We have had some significant changes in our general fund budget since you adopted that back in June. Tuition and fees, one of the big unknowns was our enrollment. We were very concerned about where that was, what the impact of COVID would have on our enrollment. Our billing units are indeed 6% down, or down below projection by 6%. So down farther than the 3% we had projected. And you'll see that in our overall projection in a moment. However, that will be more than offset by the federal Higher Education Emergency Relief Act allocation that we have chosen to use, as we have talked earlier, to help with online fees. So as we have a large percentage of our courses now offered online, we have had for many, many years an online per billing unit fee. We did not believe that was appropriate to charge students this fall and winter because of the, again, predominance of courses offered online. So we have used CARES Act funding to waive those fees for summer, fall, and winter for students. So again, you'll see that revenue come through from that federal funding source in a moment. On the state front, we had, if you'll remember back to when we adopted the budget, projected in a state aid cut of 15% for this year, 15% or $2.8 million. The state did cut our last year funding, as Vicki alluded to when she talked through our financial statements. Our state aid operating revenue was cut $2.1 million, but it was cut last year in 1920. It was restored to its full pre-cut 1920 amount for the 2021 year. So we do not have to recognize any of that $2.8 million budget reduction. You will see that added back in this budget. Our interest income is down, so we have incorporated that here. As we know, rates are down and look to be staying there for the foreseeable future. On the expense side of the equation, salary and benefits make up over 8% of our total general fund expenditures. We are using CARES Act revenue to offset some of those expenses. We have smaller class sizes across the board. We've kept everything at no more than 25, some lower, even those courses that are in person so that we can social distance. So we are allowed to use CARES dollars to offset the additional salary costs related to that. We are also using CARES Act dollars to help cover some salary costs for those whose jobs are different because of COVID and what's going on campus. Two of the group's custodians and our campus police officers Our large examples of that, our custodians are doing very different cleaning. We have significantly fewer people on campus, and we are cleaning more because of the protocols that are in place. So the CARES Act funding will help us cover some of those salary costs. And likewise with our police officers, again, very significantly fewer students on campus, but our police officers' work looks different. It's different to help manage when our buildings are less populated. And in addition to that, they've done some significant additional work around helping with some food distribution, helping when we had our Spectrum partners in our parking ramps, and a myriad of other issues. So you will see that. And then finally, as was shared with you in a memorandum prior to this, we have incorporated a proposed, and we'll look for your action on this later in your agenda, but we have incorporated a proposed addition of the earlier deferred meet and confer salary. If you'll remember, we did not provide the meet and confer group with an increase. We were waiting on state aid and enrollment. We are now proposing that we reinstate that. That total is approximately $510,000, and that includes approximately a little over 30% in FICA and retirement costs. So that would be incorporated in there.
I have a question just on that last bullet point, Lisa.
Sure.
The memo said it was about 2.5%. And so when we say that, is any individual supervisor only authorized to give 0 to 2.5, or does that represent a bucket of money where he can give one person 4 and give another person less than that, as long as it balances out to 2.5 average? How does that work?
That is a great question. The pool is 2.5% that's available. However, that is also the cap. So there will be no meet and confer employee. No supervisor would have the ability to grant more than 2.5%.
Thank you.
Next slide. Just very briefly, general fund is our focus, but we will have some significant changes, some losses in our auxiliary funds. Parking revenue is down significantly. We could have allocated CARES money to help with the expenses associated with that. That said, we felt it more appropriate to help students with online fees and some of those other costs. Food service will also be down fairly significantly. We have asked our creative dining partners to maintain some semblance of food service on campus for those students that are here. And there's a cost to that with significantly less revenue coming in. So I would anticipate both of those funds having a fairly significant deficit this year. There is fund balance, particularly in parking, to help with that, and we will watch food service closely. And then finally, debt retirement. As we have shared prior, we did just complete our bond refunding, and we do have $1.6 million in savings between our plant transferring to our debt service. And we structured that so that the bulk of that savings will come to us in this year and next year, which will help. Next slide. I know this is very small, and we will review this at a later point, if not before, certainly when we go through the formal amendment. What I wanted to point out specifically is that 2021 adopted, that's the column that you actually approved, with virtually a balanced budget, that net revenue expense of $16,297, virtually balanced. What we will see now, based on the CARES money coming in, the state aid cut, or the state aid restoration, so there is no cut, and the enrollment change, we will see a net increase in our revenue expense of approximately $3 million. You will see that net projected loss over the next 2 years when that CARES Act money goes away. That said, as we go through every year, those projections in 21, 22, and 22, 23 are very conservative. I would expect that we will be able to improve those. And I would say, as Vicki earlier pointed out, one of the most important lines to look at is that ending fund balance. If you look at all the way out to 22, 23 at 17.9%, we would still be higher if this came in exactly as projected than our original adopted. So even if we do see some smaller deficits in the next couple of years as that federal money goes away, our fund balance at the end is still higher as a percentage of expense than when we started. So all in all, a solid projection. You can clearly see that the federal money is helping us tremendously in 2021, as well as the fact that the state did not come through and cut our state aid again.
Lisa, your 2021 projected the net revenue of $3+ million. Are you also assuming in there approval of the meet and confer contract recommendation? Yes. Okay, all right, so that's already assumed and built in there. All right, yes. Thanks.
And again, these are all projections. The numbers will continue to change, but I thought as you considered that later in your agenda, you might like to see where that would put us.
Okay.
Lisa?
Yes.
This is Kathy. Two things, just for clarification. I think you said that we were down 6% on billing units when the budget was 3%, but your memo said 9%. Obviously it all works out, but what is it? How much are we really down in our billing?
We projected to be down 3. We are down 9. So we are 6% beyond our projection.
Okay. And is that 510,000, is that covering a retroactive piece to it? Does this let people collect the increase back to when we would have normally done it, or does it start immediately?
It is proposed
yeah.
Until you consider it. It is retroactive back to July.
Thank you.
Other questions?
All right, next slide then, please. Very briefly, because we keep talking about all this CARES money, just a recap, there are 4 buckets, if you will, of CARES Act resource that we are dealing with. The first bucket there on the screen is the allocation that's going directly to students. Ann Isaacson and her team are managing that masterfully. We have close to $2.8 million that's been dispersed already directly to students in the form of grants, and the balance will be there. The second half of that, the second $3.4 million, is the Federal Department of Ed funding to the institution. Then we have a small segment of that called strengthening institutions, the $335,000, again through Department of Ed. And then the $2.1 million coronavirus relief funds comes from Department of Treasury through the state. And that amount is almost exactly equal to the 11% the state cut us in 1920. So the state cut our operating revenue, and then in 1920 and in 2021, they have provided us with federal coronavirus relief or CRF funds to help to offset that. Each of the next slides, class, you can move, provides you with a little more detail of what we're doing with the institutional dollars related to CARES Act. Again, some of this you've seen before. And as you can tell by the chart, we know that we've overspent. And at this point, we only have the 3.4 to spend. I just wanted you to see the total impact of the online fee waivers, the summer fee waivers, and then of course the credit retakes that we've granted students to retake any courses are incorporated in here as well. Next slide. The $335,000 has virtually the same allocation authorization as the large $3.4 million bucket. We are spending it in the same way. And last slide. The allocation of $2.1 million of coronavirus relief or CRF funds we are using for technology, a lot of laptops and hotspots that were provided for students, as well as infrastructure support that our IT team is implementing to help deal with all of the increase in online services. Some of the staff costs, custodial campus police, and others that are directly related to COVID we talked about. We have purchased over $200,000 in PPE, personal protective equipment, and other materials to make our campus as safe as possible, including plexiglass shields and other supplies. And then again, we'll cover the cost of lowering class size. Again, that exceeds our allocation. I wanted you to see total estimated costs and needs We only have the 2.1 to fund. And that is it. I'm happy to answer any questions. I know I went really quickly. I want to be respectful of your time, but also wanted to show you a little bit more comprehensive of an update than we typically do due to the significant changes.
Thank you. Anyone else? Questions for Lisa? Seeing none. Thanks very much. Thanks for the update. And it feels like we're in a better position now than what we thought we were going to be the last time we met. So we're certainly grateful for that. So thank you very much. We're going to move on to updates. We do have a report from Kathy Mullins, our director of our foundation. So Kathy, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see you all. As you can imagine, the work in the foundation has been a little different since COVID hit. It's actually changed quite a bit with the pandemic, but I'm very proud of my team. They've stepped up and we've worked hard to stay engaged with our donors and to continue our fundraising and friend-raising activities in ways that don't involve face-to-face interaction. To that end, we recently held our first ever virtual ScholarFest event where we honored Dave and Karen Custer. This event was quite successful for our first virtual event. We had no idea what to expect. And we ended up raising a little over $140,000 for scholarships with that event. A big thanks to class and the media team for all the work that they had to do to help make this event a success. We can't do what we do a lot of times without that media team, and we are so grateful for them. So thank you, class and company. As we continue our work for the rest of the academic year, we've determined that we will not be doing any big events until we're able to do them face-to-face again. So what that means is we will not be holding our Creating Connections breakfast in February as of right now. We're all settled into the Custer Alumni House, and the plan for fundraising and fundraising is to focus the remainder of the year on utilizing this amazing space that we're in for smaller, intimate gatherings of donors that allow for social distancing to happen and meet with the guidelines that are issued around small events. So that's what we're looking at doing to try to continue to keep donors connected to the college. And then for the last part of my update today, I'd like to provide the board with an overview of the scholarships that have been awarded and dispersed to date so far this fall. So with enrollment being down, we're dispersing fewer awards than we would have normally at this time, but still, with that being said, we have authorized 691 scholarship awards for this fall semester to 631 unique students. And the total dollar amount for those students is $553,864. With that, we also have available an additional $42,000 of Spectrum Health scholarship funds that we are holding on to for summer, for the summer term, because we know that in summer, the students that are in these healthcare programs, that's usually when they're finishing up. So we want to make sure that they have dollars available to them at that time. So we are hanging on to some of those funds for that purpose. And we continue to re-award the scholarship dollars that did not get utilized yet this fall for the winter term, for the upcoming term. That's truly been our top priority right now in the foundation, is to ensure that we re-award every scholarship dollar that students may not have, students who didn't come didn't take. So we want to make sure that students are able to use those. So that's been a lot of work. We've made a lot of phone calls to students, and we're working weekly with our financial aid partners to make sure that we get these dollars awarded. So big thank you to my team and the financial aid team, because they're doing a ton of work right now to make sure that students have those dollars available so that they can continue their education. So I short and sweet today, and it's a good day for it, it looks like. So that concludes my report.
Thank you, Kathy.
If
Comments or
anyone-
questions? Anyone? So earlier in our meeting, we talked about the importance of enhancing the brand of the community college experience. Kathy, you and your team have certainly done a marvelous job in this community at enhancing the brand of Grand Rapids Community College.
Thank you.
Thanks for all your work. We're just happy to be part of that.
Thank you. We do have a great team. Thank you.
All right. So on that note, we're going to move on with our agenda. I have one item on my report. I want to just acknowledge that Trustee Williams was identified by the Grand Rapids Business Journal as one of Western Michigan's most influential leaders under the age of 40. So Daniel, for you, you probably think that's not a big deal, but for us, it is a big deal. And it is a big deal to be recognized in that capacity. So congratulations. And we are proud that you're sitting on our team and just want you to know that. So you don't even need to respond to that. You can just, unless you want to.
Well, I'll just note that I'm on the other side now. So I'm distinguished years old. So I'm 41. So now I can't get that anymore.
Oh.
And, so I thought it was so funny. Like they said, well, now that you're so distinguished, and I was like,
well, that's
great. I don't feel that much more distinguished, but I appreciate it.
Well,
Yes.
I want you to know that I did not make the 30 under 30, nor did I make the 40 under 40. I have this thread-like hope that the journal is going to create a 70 over 70 category, and maybe we'll throw our hat in the ring for there. So anyway, congratulations. Bill, I'm going to turn it over to you and your report.
Thank you, Chairperson Cucci. I also say congratulations to Trustee Williams for that distinguished honor. And it's always good to see folks who are recognized in that regard, who are connected to this college. So thank you for that. I want to give way here to Julie Parks, our Executive Director for Workforce Training. Julie, she runs the MTech here in town, and you must understand, while she runs the MTech, you need to understand that Julie Parks is a national leader. It's amazing to hear how many folks across the country who that I get to work with on different efforts, that when they hear Grand Rapids Community College, and when it comes to workforce training, workforce development, customized training, they know Julie Parks' name and they know her work. She's going to share with you today what we have done to this point with a $6 million grant that came to us several years ago from the Department of Labor, that this college was made proposal and was selected to lead out in this grant. It was the largest of the America's Promise grants. The most you could get in that effort was $6 million. We had the $6 million, and she's going to share with you what that work has looked like. And I'm sure, as I am always, you'll be amazed with what this college and other partners across this region have done. So Julie, please.
Thanks, Bill. Go ahead, class. Good afternoon. My name is Julie Parks, and I work in workforce training here at Grand Rapids Community College. Thank you for the opportunity today to tell you about a project that we've been working on for 3.5 years called the America's Promise Grant. It's from the U.S. Department of Labor. It's funded by H-1B visa dollars. Those are dollars that employers pay in order to bring someone from outside of the United States in to fill a job. So this money was used to try to build more talent within our area to meet the needs of employers. The grant ends in December, although we have asked for an extension through June 30th, and we'll tell you why. We have a long history since 2008 in workforce training of being very grant active, and not in a way that we're chasing money, in a way that we have ideas that we want to try. As you can see from our first big grant in 2008, which was a grant that Grand Valley held called the Wired Grant, and then through America's Promise Grant, which is the latest grant, Over $20 million we've brought to serve over 10,000 individuals in West Michigan and to give them skills. We really use these grants as an innovation kind of workshop to really help us figure out what can we do better, how can we create better programs, and how can we help people have more success. So in the America's Promise Grant, this was really designed to expand regional workforce partnerships and to start to provide a pipeline. We focus on healthcare because most of our H-1B visa jobs in West Michigan are in the healthcare sector, and so it fit with the grant requirements to do that. This program, 23 grants were awarded with people from 28 states. Only 4 community colleges in the nation led these grants, with Grand Rapids Community College being one of those. We're very proud of that, and we're proud of the relationship that we have with West Michigan Works, which has been a really key partner in this project, along, of course, with employers. Part of this grant was to really understand what employers needed and to see how we could deliver on that, to build a pipeline through giving free or very low-cost training and education to individuals. So the grant was a $6 million grant. We were required to leverage 25% more than that amount, so $1.5 million, to bring towards the project. And so it's $7.5 million project. As of the end of September, we've spent $5.3 million, and we've leveraged another $2.7 million, with the majority of that coming through WIOA, that's the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, PATH, our other grants that we have, and then in-kind donations by employers, by our nonprofit partners, and through some of our staff time at the college. Initially, when we started the grant, we had 9 different partners in the project, 9 nonprofit partners, and then 10 employer partners that were key partners in the project. Today, we have 58 employers in 7 counties with 14 community and nonprofit organizations that have been a part of this project. And when we say a part of the project, they're not there in name only. They have participated in building curriculum, in recruiting individuals, and helping people stay motivated to do this work and to continue to grow the pipeline. Here are 2 of our employer partners to talk to you today about what they thought about the grant and what they saw for their companies from this project.
Hi, my name is Doug Himmeline. I'm the Vice President of Human Resources for Christian Living Services, or Holland Home. You know, this actually has been a great opportunity to have the CNA class at Holland Home. We were able to do this a couple of parts. Through the America Promise Grant, allowed a lot of this to happen. And this was a grant that GRCC came to Holland Home with an opportunity. And specifically, Julie and her team. This grant was excellent for Holland Home. We hired over 45 employees, but also the community here in Grand Rapids, Michigan. You know, we would not have been able to do this without this grant and the team from GRCC. This was just a collaboration, more than GRCC. A lot of employers came to the table to give advice, and GRCC asked us, what do we need? What do you guys need as an employer to produce outstanding aids? And we sat at the table several meetings, and it was a talking session back and forth. But this was an excellent opportunity, and thank you to GRCC, their team, specifically Julie, Linda, and the instructors, but also all the career coaches. You know, my recruiters, they actually formed a relationship with GRCC to make this happen. And it wasn't just a one person, it was a team effort all the way around. But outstanding efforts getting us this grant to make it actually happen.
So good afternoon. I'm Charlotte Bendis, and I'm the manager of talent selection for Spectrum Health. And I kind of want to echo everything that Doug has said, right? That this grant has really provided Spectrum with the opportunity to widen and deepen our candidate pools, right? And in areas that we really have difficulty surfacing the right number of candidates that do have certification. And so not only did we benefit from just the broad and deep reach that the grant provided out into the community, just sharing more information about careers in healthcare, right? So we're still seeing the benefit of that. But we also directly benefited from those that went through the programming, became certified, and that we are then able to hire at Spectrum. And so just to give you some ideas for the certified nurse assistant, to give you an idea of the numbers, right? We've hired 59 certified nurse assistants in the last couple years. And on the MA side of things, 45. And so in this year of 2020, when we have all been impacted by the coronavirus, right, we've really seen that this ability to have a pipeline of candidates became even more important, because a lot of the reaction to the coronavirus was to kind of slow down programming. Right. So last year, when we were benefiting from the number of hires through the grant, I don't think we were really anticipating that we would have this dip in qualified certified people because of the COVID response. Right. So it's kind of provided an interesting twist as to how important the grant was to stability this year.
These are our outcome measures for the grant. So our goal was 1,000 individuals to be served. Actually, we've served over 1,600 individuals, 160% of goal. Our target population was low-income individuals using metrics that the Workforce Board for our region has established. So, for instance, one person alone in West Michigan needs to earn $24,000 a year to cover their basic living, their basic survival for West Michigan. Then incumbent workers, and then 1,300 individuals who enrolled in training and education. Not everyone had to enroll in training and education. Some people just needed help to find an employer, to find a job. And so 1,300 of them did go to get more skills. That was 166% of goal. 1,196 completed training. That's an 89% completion rate in healthcare, which we're very proud of. Of that group, 1,191 completed a degree or earned a credential. And then incumbent workers, of the incumbent workers that we serve so far, 178 of them have received a position where they make more money and have a better position as a result of the training they were in. So every goal was exceeded except for the incumbent worker goal, and we're still working to exceed that goal. The participants of this grant don't look very different from the participants we have in any of our educational programs at GRCC. The average age is 29 years old, with almost 12% of our participants in healthcare being men, which is a very big deal. In clinical areas, we have very low percentages of men that go into clinical fields, and so we're very happy with that. Also, we're very happy for the people of color. 54% of the participants in this grant were people of color, which really meant what our employers asked us as they're looking to diversify their workforce to look more like the communities that they serve. We were cited by the U.S. Department of Labor for promising practices that we have, examples that the rest of the nation could use of practices that are working well in West Michigan and that this money really started. One was the Healthcare Employers Council. We have a very active group of healthcare employers for this region that have been participating in curriculum development, loaning subject matter experts to us, supplying supplies and equipment, hiring students, participating in employer panels, participating in interviews, very active group. The model for how that is managed is a sector group is facilitated by West Michigan Works, with GRCC sitting at the leadership table, along with two of our other partner community colleges in this area, Montcalm and Muskegon. In this grant, a big breakthrough for us was we have a shared data system that we use with all of our nonprofit partners, our Michigan Works partners, and our colleges. In this data agreement that we have, we share information. Our students or our participants are in this system, and no matter where they go to enter, all of us can see where they started. So if somebody wants to engage with GRCC, but they've never been here before, and maybe they're a little bit concerned because they haven't gone to college before, they can start at the Urban League of Grand Rapids or the Hispanic Center or Goodwill. And those individuals can help them accomplish all their paperwork, all the forms, and they'll put online. A person doesn't have to make another trip. We can make it a lot friendlier, handoff, warmer, to help them come to GRCC and to be able to have success there. And then another thing that we're very, very proud of is our implicit bias training. We worked with the Grand Rapids Urban League and in 2017 started implicit bias training for frontline supervisors. And we did it because we had this feeling and we were starting to hear from our students that they weren't retaining their jobs, especially our students of color. And so we said, we need to do something with frontline supervisors to help with this cultural competency, to help so these individuals can stay on. And we were able to then build data to show what was happening and if this was working and not working. And we had incredible support from employers. We're very proud of some of the highlights on how we intake individuals. We use something called the ACT Talent and Fit Assessment to help individuals make a decision. We didn't want a student to be in a program where they finally did a clinical rotation and they discovered they didn't like blood or they didn't like working with sick people. We wanted to get that up front. We're also very proud of how we were able to integrate training with foundational skills, language skills, and technical skills. So for instance, you could have been an individual who was just learning English. But you need to go to work and you need to have a job that might pay better than just a minimum wage job. So we could train you as a certified nursing assistant and you could learn English at the same time by having a language instructor and a technical instructor in the same room. So you could go to work once you completed that program and continue on your pathway to become a nurse or to become a medical aid in a health situation. So it really advanced career pathways for individuals. Also, we were able to create new programs and new curriculum with this money. Implicit bias that I already told you about, 11 sessions have been held to date. Sterile processing apprenticeship program, of course, the certified nursing assistant program. We rebuilt a pharmacy technician program, so it is online with only 3 labs that people have to come to campus for in person. We started a culinary medicine program for doctors in partnership with the Sekia Institute, and a culinary food service boot camp program, which has been really beneficial to really start to move people who are in nutrition services, especially at hospitals and long-term care facilities, to move up the pathway to get jobs that pay better and really open up jobs for other people to come into the industry. So a big breakthrough in this project was the obtaining of the UI wage data. That's from the Unemployment Insurance Agency. This was the first grant and the first project that we've ever had where we've been able to obtain this data. And we really had support from West Michigan Works, from our institutional research department at the college and financial services at the college to help us get this, something that legislation gave us the right to get a few years ago. So in March, we received over 1,800 wage records. It's very restricted. Privacy is extremely important in who would have access to this data. We had to hand key all this information into our systems. They did not allow for us to directly deliver it to our system. We had wage data from the first quarter of 2017 through the third quarter of 2019. And what did the wage data tell us? Well, it told us a lot of things that we wanted to know. First of all, we saw an increase in the number of people who received employment. So right now, our method for finding out about employment is we ask employers, we ask individuals, we call them, We mail them, we track them down through social media to try to get information on where they were hired, how much they were hired for. The wage data gave us all that information. It told us what sector they were hired in, what their wages were, and we could see their wages over a period of time. It actually increased our hourly wage. We have an average hourly wage for the grant. We thought it was about $16 an hour, which is okay, but our goals are higher than that for individuals in our programs. We want them to make living wages. So it went after the UI wage data. We see that it's $17.32 an hour, which is good, an improvement, and we want to continue to grow that. It also showed us retention. For the first time, we could see retention over the period of the grant. We saw people's wages either staying the same and staying in the sector that they had gotten hired in, that they had trained or taken education in. And then we saw increasing wages over the quarter. So for the first time, we had some hard data that was associated with this. We were also able to see participants' employment activity that might not be in a positive way, that maybe it went down or they left the healthcare field, which has allowed our job developers to follow up with individuals to see, is there more that we can offer them? What can we do to help them? So it's just been an amazing project, and we're so honored to have been granted this grant funding and to have this relationship with so many employers and nonprofit partners who really made this all happen together. Truly, it was a team that came together for our community. But I would be remiss if I didn't point out to you the dream team at GRCC who made this happen. These are individuals who worked through this program. Some are still working in the program today. Some have moved on. David Lovell, who was our program manager for this grant, moved on in March to lead GRCC's Title III grant. All his experience that he's had through this project and a previous project now brought to bear in another way. We continue to work to grow these individuals into leadership positions and to really give them an opportunity to serve individuals in our community. They are the most committed group of individuals that one could work with, and I'm honored to be able to do that. So thank you for letting me present to you today. I would be happy to take any questions that you might have.
Questions at all from anyone?
I'd like to know, what is the legislation that allows the college to look at that unemployment insurance agency data? Is it federal or state?
It's state.
Okay.
State data.
Thank you.
That was legislation that GRCC, Julie Parks, as well as Lisa Freiberger and myself really helped at the State House on pushing. It's data that has been available to four-year schools for a long time, for some reason not available to community colleges to use. It was interesting to see the pushback of this, but Julie and others across the state, it wasn't just GRCC, it was other institutions, were persistent and were able to get that done.
Great. Thank you.
Anyone else? Bill, did you have anything else for your report?
No, I just wanted to shine a bright light on this awesome work that's being done over in Julie's shop, and thank her and her team. She's kind to point out her team, and they are rock stars, but Julie Parks is a rock star. We're blessed to have her and the attention she pays to our students and to our programs over there.
Very well done. Again, thanks so much, Julie, for that. We're going to move our meeting along now to approval of the consent items. I will accept a motion to approve the consent items as presented in our packet.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there support for that?
Support.
Thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. We also have one purchase item over $100,000. A motion, please, to accept that purchase.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there support for that?
Support.
Support. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. Thank you. That motion carries. Each year, we need to present through the state of Michigan an approved 5-year capital outlay plan. That plan was presented to us in our packet. We do have Vicki Genoviak here, I believe. I don't see her.
I'm here.
Oh, you're here. Okay,
I'm
okay. To respond to our questions. And Vicki, unless you have something you particularly want to highlight, why don't we just have this as an opportunity for you to respond to our questions?
You did a great job. That works well for me.
All right, all right. So we've seen the report. We know why we need to do this. Any questions from trustees before we accept a motion to approve this?
I have a few questions.
Go ahead.
I'm just going to spring into them. In section 1, it mentions that we were accepted into the Academic Quality Improvement Project for the Higher Learning Commission's accreditation. Is that something we applied for? And what is the AQUIP project?
AQUIP was Dr. Pink will hop in with me in a minute also. AQUIP was an opportunity for accreditation developed by the Higher Learning Commission that focused on continuous quality improvement. And so Dr. Juan Olivares was president at the time, and that was the pathway that we started down with several other colleges, and we're very active in that. The Higher Learning Commission has since they don't reference it as AQUIP any longer. It is now just a different pathway approach, but it still focuses on this concept of continuous quality improvement and not just kind of a one-time, you're good for 10 years and then you wait to your next accreditation visit. So we have annual reports, annual updates that we submit to them to confirm that we are still on that wonderful path.
I think you did an awesome job with it. That's what AQUIP is all about. And AQUIP has been moved out by HLC, and we are, from an accreditation perspective, more of what's called the open pathway. And as we start drawing closer to our official visit here in the next 3 years, you guys will hear a whole lot more about our accreditation pathway.
Thank you. Kathleen,
Okay.
you got other questions?
I did. On page 19, we're talking about how there are certain variables about today's students that will have an impact on our future space redesign. And so I'm just looking for an example or two. You know, having part-time students, around 70% of our student body, first generation students increasing each year. What are some space changes on campus that would need adjustment based on those variables, if you have any examples?
Yeah, certainly. Very quickly, I can. We're making a lot of those kinds of design changes and adjustments as part of the RJF project. And so when we get down to first floor, you'll be able to see some of those kinds of things. Eric, Dr. Mullen, and Tina Hoxie and their enrollment services team are very engaged and also very aware of how they need to redesign space to provide better services for students in terms of opportunity to meet one-on-one, in terms of being able to leverage technology for that, in terms of creating a welcoming environment from the moment you walk in. And they're bringing a lot of that kind of expertise and recommendations into the RJF renovation. So you'll be able to see some of that if you've been on campus in fifth floor, you know, more informal places for students to gather in groups and study, the opportunity to create some of these accidental collaboration opportunities between faculty and students, between students and other students. And we're doing well. I mean, we've got places in Cook Hall and there are the Applied Technology Center renovation that will be completion at the end of the semester. All include those kinds of environments now, but we've got some buildings yet that don't offer that. The Learning Resource Center needs some work. The Student Center is in need of an update, and Sneeden Hall. So those are highlighted as the ones that really we need to focus on in the future.
Okay, thank you. last question on page 23, item 2 talks about our 25 advisory committees, which that's such an excellent way to keep abreast of industry needs. Are those listed anywhere, our advisory committees that we have on curriculum? How often do they meet?
You probably could, I would say, access those from the schools themselves. So the School of Workforce Development, the Dean's Office, that probably obviously houses the bulk of those advisory committees. Dean Mansfield in her office has that listing. There's still several advisory committees over in our School of Arts and Sciences. Our early childhood comes to mind immediately. And then I'll also say, additionally, some advisory committees in Julie Parks and her area as well around workforce training. So in regards. And so, yeah, those we have, if you look at the list of our, it's almost verbatim, I would say, Vicki, correct me if I'm wrong, those listing of programs we have, I don't know of one that isn't tied to an advisory committee, those technical and occupational programs.
Yeah.
Great. Thank
Anyone
you.
else? Anyone else?
Vicki, is the Veteran Affairs, that office, Janice's office, is it still going to be housed in the RJF building?
Janice's office, it will still be in RJF. We're in the process right now of doing some additional design for a level that we didn't think we were going to be able to do because of budget, and due to a favorable bid day, now we're able to go back in and see where we might be able to expand scope. And we're actually meeting on that tomorrow and talk about the impact for a new veteran center. So thank you for that. It's very timely.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Very
Cheryl.
excited for a proposed expansion of services and facility. Thank you.
Anyone else? Hearing no other questions, then I will accept a motion to approve the capital outlay submission as presented by Vicki.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there support for that?
Second.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same sign. Thank you, Vicki, for that good work. Apologize for rushing you through that. You handled our questions with charm and dignity. I want you to know that. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
We have one more action item of importance that we need to deal with. It was referenced earlier that we do have a meet and confer salary increase to respond to. I'm going to turn it back over to Lisa for a quick review and update on that before we take action. Lisa.
Thank you. And as you alluded to, we've already talked about it briefly. I'm happy to answer any questions. It would be an approval of a pool of up to 2.5. As mentioned earlier, no supervisor can grant more than that 2.5, and it is based on evaluation. Just a reminder that there are no steps like in prior contracts. So meet and confer doesn't have an increase aside from this. Would be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
We've seen the financial implications of that already. Any other questions for clarification? Hearing none, I'll accept a motion to approve the meet and confer salary increase by 2.5%. Thank you. Support for that?
Support.
Support. We need a roll call vote for approval. Misty, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Trustee Williams.
Support.
Trustee Crosby.
Yes.
Trustee Bruinsma.
Yes.
Trustee Brames.
Yes.
Chairperson Pucci.
Yes.
Ooh,
That motion-
I forgot Cheryl. Sorry, Cheryl.
Yeah.
I can't see everybody.
That's all right. It's not the first time.
Trustee Siegel.
Yes.
Thank you.
Did we get everybody? I will then declare that motion approved unanimously. We have now reached the time in our meeting for the final opportunity for public comment. Again, should you choose to make comment on any matter, you may do so using the chat function. Also invite you to take advantage of email. Each one of our email addresses are listed on the Grand Rapids Community College website. But if you have wish to use the chat, please identify yourself. We are going to take just a moment to see once if there's anyone out there that wishes to do that. While we're waiting, I'm wondering if there are other last minute comments or last minute reflections from any trustee that they would like to make at this time before we adjourn. Hearing none, has anyone indicated, Misty or class, that they are using the chat function?
No.
We have no questions. So at that point, we are going to declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you very much and have a good evening. Goodbye.
Thank you, Dave.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Goodbye, thanks.